Hello everyone, welcome back to the ninth part of how to reaccess your chess. We were discussing about the major piece, heavy piece, Rook, and we have not yet completed our Rook part. So in today's video, we are simply going to complete our Rook part and we are going to move on to the next part in how to reaccess your chess. So this video is going to be extremely crucial because after learning this video, after watching this video, you are simply going to master how to use your Rook at 100% capacity and major stuff like that. So it's going to be extremely helpful for you. We are going to discuss 9 critical diagrams. So now let's quickly check it out. So coming to the first diagram, we are going to discuss a game. We have a game basically. We have d4, knight f6, c4, e6. We are not majorly going to focus on the game, but on the main part. Bishop g2, queen c8. The idea is to play bishop to h3 whenever the knight moves, and the bishop was currently hitting the pawn on b7. Knight c3, e5, e4, bishop g4, f3, bishop d7, e5, d5, bishop e7, bishop e3, c5. Blocking the position, we have end passing, short castle, knight e2, bishop h3 as the knight is no longer on g1. Short castle, rook d8, g4 takes, queen b7, knight to g3, g6. Here, black can also capture the pawn, but after rook f2, queen b4, I guess after knight f5, black is not yet happy with his position because getting a one pawn, but in exchange of high, huge amount of tempo. So it's not a good idea. So black first played g6, covering the f5 and h5 square. Rook f2, defending the pawn. d5, cd, ed, knight takes, rook takes. And from here, we are going to discuss the position. We have rook into d5. So in our previous video, we end up on our last diagram where we're talking about how the importance of rook on the 8th rank is so much critical. So in this particular point, the move, like currently black is hitting the queen, so the natural move comes to anybody's mind is to play the move queen to c2 maybe. But guys, it's not the best. The best move which was played in the game was to play the move rook to c8 check. And the idea behind this particular move here is, after rook c8 check, white is simply hitting the king. So if you try to play a move like bishop f8, for example, defending it, here after queen to c1, you can already claim that white is better because white is completely controlling the c file and white is extremely better. So if black tries to remove the king, here we simply have queen c1 again and white is too much better as we have rook c7 in the air. So black is actually not having a pleasant position. So if you try to capture the rook, which looks a very sensible move, but after queen into d5, capturing the rook, hitting the rook on 8, knight d7, rook d2, knight b6, queen into e5, and white is already a pawn up. White is the one in the driver's seat, also hitting the bishop on e7. So we can already claim that this particular position is already very comfortable for white, and this could be even winning for white. So in the game after rook c8 check, a very exclamation move, I would say, bishop to f8 was played in the game, and here we have queen to d5. Extremely logical move. Extremely well calculated move, and the idea behind this queen to d5 idea here is, after queen trade, rook to d2 hitting the queen goes back, rook to d8, and if you don't play the move queen b7 and if you play the move queen f5, after bishop h6, the game is actually over for black. Which if you try to move the knight now, you lose the rook, and now comes the exclamation move, rook into knight. You have to capture it, and it's a mate. So it's a well explained diagram. This is the way you should play. So after rook d2, we have queen b7, rook here. We have a rook. Basically, black lost a rook, b3. Knight came to the center. And we have again a very strong move, g5. Basically stopping all black's play. Nothing is happening now. And it's actually a game over. Knight b6. Rook to bishop takes, pawn takes. Rook takes. King move. f5, check, and the game is over because if you try to play king f7, it's a one move mate. If you try to go away like this, rook d8 check. If you try to come here, rook rook check, and this is the mate. So basically, there are many ways to mate blacking in this particular position, but the main point here, what we were discussing here, is the move rook to c8 is simply a mind-blowing move. You must always be aware of how the rook on the 8th rank becomes such a powerful piece. It is basically of an attacking nature when the rook enters in the 8th rank, and after rook f8, rook c8 check, it's actually game over for black. From here onwards, black started to went wrong. So this was the first diagram. So now let's move on to the second diagram. Coming on to the second diagram, as we have seen, a rook on the 8th rank can lead to all sorts of fun. However, control of the 7th rank is particularly prized because it not only annoys the enemy king but also targets the enemy pawns that sit on the rank. Like in this very position, we have the rook. Not only like with the combination of the bishop and the rook, it not only annoys the king, but it also hits the bishop pawn, and it is like the position is very interesting. Currently, it's white to play, and it looks like if you try to count the material, black is a piece up. But here, it's actually winning for white. It's completely resignable position for black. After rook check, rook takes, and it's a check, and it's only one square for black king to move. Rook again check, not capturing the pawn, but to play the move rook check. Take, again check, take, again check, take, and not now giving another check, but to simply grab the rook, and white is simply a rook up, and it's completely winning. So this position is more like a fantasy than a reality. It doesn't really happen in a real game. But yeah, it is basically an example how the rook on the 7th rank is more prioritized compared to the rook on the 8th rank, as it not only annoys the king, but it also put pressure on the enemy pawns. So this was the second diagram. So now let's move on to the third diagram. So now discussing the third diagram, we have again a game between Jeremy Silman versus P. Biases. He was a very strong grandmaster. The game is from San Francisco from 1983. We have d4 by Jeremy Silman, d5, c4, c6. We have Queen's Gambit. We have Slav actually, e3, e6, knight f3, knight d7, queen c2, bishop e7, b3, bishop e2. We have this position. Takes takes, bishop f6, queen g4, takes takes, and from here, after rook into c7, GM Grandmaster Biases, playing with the white black pieces, was a fantastic defensive player from his time. So one can understand why he thought he'd be able to hold this quite endgame. However, his position turns out to be far worse than he imagined. Basically, it looks like it's an equal it's an equal material. Positionally, we can definitely claim that white is slightly better because of superior pawn structure. I would say better control and like having a better control on the d file compared to black. But it turns out to be completely worse than he imagined, because in this very position, white simply plays the move knight to b5, hitting the rook. Rook goes rook takes, rook takes. If you try to move the rook like to maybe to e7, it's not a good idea as it's a mate. Yeah. So if you try to play the move rook to c8 going back, here simply bishop into f6, g into f6, rook takes. If you take with the rook, we simply trade the rook and capture the a7 pawn, and it's winning. But if you try to capture with the knight, we can play the move rook d7, hitting the bishop and the pawn, and it's still winning. So yeah, this was the point. So black first traded and played the move rook to c8, and like yeah, in this position, what happens if black plays the move rook e7? Again, after a knight into a7 is a very strong move because you can't capture because it's a mate. So that is the very reason rook c8 must play, and now bishop trade, and now rook d7, and you can see how the rook simply penetrated on the 7th rank of the enemy king. Rook b8, f, and f4 is a very, very strong move, I would say. Now simply denying the square to the knight on e5, a6, knight to d6, hitting the bishop, Knight comes hitting, counter-attacking the bishop to h5, hitting the f7 pawn 3 times, rook to c7, rook to d8, knight c8, not capturing the pawn yet, but playing the move knight c8. The idea is to play knight to e7 and capture the bishop. Bishop e4, knight takes pawn, bishop goes back, check, knight to d7, check, king f2, and now playing the move g4. And the idea is basically to play the move f5, and once black takes, it's one movement. Basically to distract the cut off the connection between the bishop and the pawn. So after rook check, king g3, f5, and we have a knight trade, and after e6, it's actually over. There is nothing black can do. So basically in this very position, I guess BSS was a friend of Jeremy Silman, so he basically played the move rook f8, allowed Jeremy to make the rook, and it's a winning. It's a mate. So yeah, this was the position. It's completely lost. You can't even play the move this because of it's still losing. I guess you can simply give a check and you can simply make a queen. So it's winning. So this was the game between Jeremy Silman versus BSS. This was the third diagram. Yeah, the basic point was to get the idea how the knight, how the rook on the 7th rank can be extremely powerful. Not only it attacks the king, but it also attacks the various pawns on the 7th rank. So this was the third diagram. So now let's move on to the fourth diagram. Coming on to the fourth diagram, again you have a game between Marco versus Melissa from Monte Carlo from 1903. We have the Sicilian. We have knight d5, h3, takes checks, bishop d3, takes checks. We are not going to look at the opening. That's not our main purpose. King h1, knight e7. If you try to capture the queen takes pawn, bishop into f6 takes, and we have a bad pawn structure. It could be very unhealthy for black. That is the reason knight e7 first, defending the knight with the queen. Rook e1. Here we have this, takes checks. Obviously, again we have a force, a bad pawn structure for black in this position. Rook e2. Simply the idea is to simply double up the rook. b4, hitting the queen. Knight b5, knight d4, g4, trying to take away the f5 square. King h8, rook e1, takes checks, takes checks. Rook to e7, d4, king g2, g5, queen d3. The idea is to threat mate in 1 now. f5 is the fourth move, takes checks. And from here we have a rook endgame. So how to win this particular rook endgame? You capture the pawn, and now you play the move rook e2. You defend. Like there are many players who tries to play the move rook to e7, trying to penetrate into black's camp, which is not at all a bad idea. But I guess you are simply giving too much counterplay to your opponent. At least you can simply defend first. And now, as Marco did in the game, king g3, rook here, and now playing the move b5, extremely strong move, takes checks, pawn post, takes checks, rook here, and basically playing the move rook b7. First, controlling the 7th rank, and the idea is to simply deliver a mate. If I wanted to, I can actually capture the pawn, but it's not the best. What happened in the game was simply the best. Black was forced to make his one rook passive. Now both the rooks simply penetrated into the 7th rank, and now the rook are ready to destroy the black king. Check, and now king g8. You can't play the move king e8 because of the move rook b7, and now it's a fourth mate, so you can't really do much. That is the reason you try to keep the king at the corner as much as possible. Rook check, rook takes pawn, rook comes. If you try to capture the pawn here, rook h8 check, and I guess this is rook g5 simply. And if you try to just remove the rook, it's 3 pawn versus the rook. It's completely winning. That is the reason black didn't went for capturing the pawn and went for the move rook c3, trying to double counter attack. But now rook check, rook come back. And here we have this position where after capturing the pawn, black simply resigned the game, and now white is simply 4 pawn up, and it's completely winning endgame for white. So you can see how white simply penetrated into black's camp by playing the move rook to b7. playing the move very rook b7 and simply taking control of the 7th rank. It's also a great example. This was the 4th diagram, so now let's move on to the 5th diagram. Now coming on to the 5th diagram, again we have a game, many games today. Yeah, we have a game between Brown versus Jamie Silman from Koltanovsky International 1999. We have a game between d4, d5, c4, c6, and 396. Knight c3, we have a Slav defense, Alapin variation, e3 takes takes, bishop e4. You have this white trade of knight for the bishop, e5, d5, takes takes, knight a2, takes takes, takes takes, takes takes, and we have the rook endgame. Yeah, so we have this endgame, and it looks like black is simply penetrating into the white's camp, so it should be waiting for black now. King h1, rook into g2. And now the idea is to simply play the move rook into h2. But now here comes the move, legendary move, bishop to g1. Coming on to the save the game, and now if black doesn't do anything, the pawn is simply going to be a queen, and it's game over for black. For white. For black. But actually in this position, black is very lucky that black is having the knight. So basically after knight h5, a5, knight check. Knight g3 check is simply amazing. I mean, a beautiful move. Now for pawn takes, rook takes. Bishop f5 moving the rook, because if you even try to push the pawn, it's still a draw, like here. But we have moving the bishop, check, check. Coming here, trying to get a back rank mate, bishop g1, rook g3. And yeah, you must play the move rook g3, or else if you try to play this, king f1 is simply winning for white. So rook g3 hitting the bishop, and you can simply repeat, and it was a draw. Basically here, when black checked with a knight g3 check, a better move would have been to play the move rook g5, and after pawn push knight check, takes check, and now this is a simple draw, yeah, by simply giving a perpetual. So this was the point how with the help of the bishop we can even stop such a deadly attack from the two rooks, from the pair of rooks, by using just a bishop. So it was a very interesting diagram. We get to see that even if your opponent simply penetrated into the 7th rank, you can simply defend it by simply covering just a single square of your like the pawn from king. Just defend it, and there is no attack, and you would be the one your opponent need to be taken care of. So this was the 5th diagram. So now let's move on to the 6th diagram. Okay, so we have the 6th diagram on the board. We have a position basically. All this shouldn't give the impression that a rook on the 7th rank or 8th rank is always advantageous. The following example should put this in perspective, like this very example. The white's rook is on the 7th rank, but it doesn't mean that white is winning or anything. In this position, it's black to play, pawn are equal, but still black is winning the game, because after king d3, black can simply capture the pawn, and black can happily push the 3 pawns on the queen side and can win the game. So it doesn't really mean that if your opponent's rook is on the 7th or the 8th rank, it doesn't mean that they are winning. Okay, if you have a position like this, if your pieces are not hanging, it's fine to allow your opponent to penetrate, because if there's nothing happening, it's only going to be a time waste for them, and eventually it would be winning position for you. So this was the 6th diagram. So now let's move on to the 7th diagram. Okay, so we have the 7th diagram on the board. It's a white to play, and it looks, if I just give you this position and say that try to evaluate the position, what are you going to play in this position? I guess majority players, 99% players would say that white is better. I would definitely agree with this, because white is having the open d5, and it's white to play, and white should be healthy. So basically, if black's rook stood on e8 instead of f8, then rook d7 would be very strong. But in our actual position, the grab for 7th rank is misguided, since it can be easily challenged with the move rook to f7, simply challenging the rook, trade of the rooks, knight's equal position. So if you try to give a check, then now rook f8, and you have to repeat, or basically white can simply come back with the rook, having the containing the open rook, open d file, and slowly get the king into the game. So this is one way to play, and yeah, so basically, yeah, it doesn't mean if your opponent is having the open file, it doesn't mean that they are winning. Like, you can see how black can simply challenge the rook despite being passive. And if white try to get into the game by moving the king, you can also try to get the king into the game. So this was a beautiful diagram, the 7th diagram. So now let's move on to the 8th diagram. So coming on to the 8th diagram, we again have a game. We have a game between Marowski versus Bone from Austin 1905. E4, E5, knight f3, knight f6, bishop b5. We have the roller pace opening, d6, c3, bishop b7, rook e1, g6, g4. We have this game, knight takes pawn, and we have an endgame very soon, pretty soon. Takes 6, and we have this position, bishop a3. So this position, it looks like white should be better because first of all, white's rook is on the 7th rank. White is having the open file. And yeah, it should be good for white. But actually it's equal because the rook on the 7th rank isn't doing much. It is hitting b7, but the rook on b5 is simply protecting it. And now this is black g plays, so black comes up with a beautiful move, bishop to f. Simply trading off the bishop. Pawn push was played, pawn push. And now rook to d1, rook to e8. If you try to capture the pawn here, bishop c5 takes, and now I would say that white could be better because of the penetration. So we first have rook to e8, rook d8. So basically you can see how white thought that the rook on the 7th rank is doing not much, so it's better to put the rook on the 8th rank. We have a rook trade, king g7, b4. So basically it looks at the first glance that maybe if the bishop would have been on c3, we can play a4 and the rook is trapped. But it's not in the case. Bishop p7, bishop check. If you try to hit the bishop here, bishop f6, and the idea is to simply get the bishop on c3 and try to capture the b4 pawn, and this would be better for black. So bishop check, bishop f6, we have bishop trade, a3, e5. And this was the very move that saved black whole rook. Rook d4 takes, king e here. And eventually after a few moves, after b6, a beautiful move, trying to trade off the pawns. Eventually it was claimed that let's agree to a draw, like in this position. So we can see how even the penetration of the rook can't do much thing. Like if your enemy simply penetrated into your sides, if they are not attacking anything, it's completely useless. It's a bad idea to even penetrate at the first glance. So this was the 8th diagram. So now let's move on to the final diagram of the day. Okay, so coming to the final diagram, we are going to end our theoretical topic all about Rook by looking at this last game played between Delshift versus Hikaru Nakamura from Mulhouse 2009. E4 d6, Nakamura playing with the black pieces, d4 g6, playing the king's Indian, trying to play the king's Indian, and now we have the modern defense. Not going to look at the opening much. Takes here, takes on e5. You can also take on over here, but yeah, taking over here, queen d5, takes, rook c8, knight b6, takes, knight f6. Like it looks so much complicated to play the move knight f6, not capturing the pawn. It's losing for black because after bishop into f4, b7 is very strong, as the bishop already guards the b8 square. So knight f6, long castle. White is also not taking actually. It's very surprising that if you try to capture here, knight d5 gives a good amount of counterplay to black. That is the reason white simply castle. I guess both the players are in theory, maybe. Knight g4, b7, rook b8, bishop b6. You can't capture the b7 pawn because it's mate in 1. So maybe f6, check. And the interesting part here is you can't take because white couldn't make a queen. So king f7, rook d7, bishop to h6, g3 takes, king b1. taking is simply a bad idea because it will allow black to simply get the bishop. King b1 right here, take. King here, rook here, pawn push, rook here. So basically it looks like white has penetrated into the 7th rank, so it should be winning. But after rook d8, rook e8, nothing is happening, and white need to be aware of these 2 pawns. Extremely powerful. At a3, bishop g5, h4. And a normal would be look like to play bishop h6. But guess this is actually a draw after king a2. After pawn push, takes. Check. And making a queen. If you take, it would be a direct check, and I guess white is the one winning. You must move the king, and now it's actually a repetition. It would be a draw. Black can't actually leave because now white could start again giving checks, and it will eventually be a draw. So yeah, it's a very complicated, but the best move here is to play the move e3, the legendary move, and after e3, bishop into b8, f2, and it's simply winning. After e2. And actually a very interesting part here is after hg5, e1 queen, b8 queen, takes. It's a very interesting position where white rook simply penetrated into the black's territory, and black is the one penetrated into white's territory, and it's actually completely winning position for black. And yeah, this was an amazing game, mind-blowing game played by Hikaru Nakamura to beat his opponent with the black pieces. You can see how again the power of the rooks are simply neglected here with because if there is no attack, you can't do anything. If there is no weakness, penetrating into your enemy's territory is simply a useless idea. So yeah, this was our final diagram, and from by watching this diagram, we have successfully covered our part of the major piece rook. And now we are going to move on to our next part, I guess, from how to react with your chess. And I'm going to see you soon. So till then, if you like this video, all the 9 diagrams, so you can like the video, you can share this video with your friends if you want them to improve your game as well. And make sure to subscribe to our channel if you are new to our channel. So I'm going to come up with these interesting videos like this. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching One Shot Chess.